The presenter at the centre of the BBC scandal is said to be angry as a fourth allegation emerges. TV and radio star Jeremy Vine says the accusations facing the unnamed host are damaging to both the corporation and his colleagues.
He needs to come forward now, I think. I know his survival instinct has kicked in, and I know he saw what happened to Philip Schofield, but my God, look at the damage to the BBC. Look at the damage to his friends, to those falsely accused, and the longer he leaves it, the worse it will be for him.
Also this lunchtime, mortgage misery. Payments are set to rise for 1 million households across the country. Water woes too, a potential increase for those bills as well. Plus, Europe's baking. Italy, Spain and Greece swelter as a long-lasting heat wave takes hold. And a handwritten note found in the Queen of Soul's sofa is her valid will.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Lucy Watson.
Good afternoon. There are repeated calls this lunchtime for the unnamed BBC presenter at the heart of the photograph sharing scandal to step forward. Another BBC star, Jeremy Vine, has urged the presenter to reveal his identity to protect both his colleagues and the corporation. The plea comes as fresh allegations are made about the nameless host. Claims he broke lockdown rules to meet a 23-year-old during the pandemic, while the Sun newspaper has published messages allegedly sent to a 17-year-old. The presenter himself is said to be angry about the claims, as Layla Hayes now reports.
Well, she said it might be 12.
The presenter at the centre of this scandal still hasn't been named. But now another BBC star, Jeremy Vine, has called for him to come forward while speaking on his Channel 5 show this morning.
It's his decision, but he needs to come forward now, I think. I know his survival instinct has kicked in, and I know he saw what happened to Philip Schofield, but my God, look at the damage to the BBC. Look at the damage to his friends, to those falsely accused, and the longer he leaves it, the worse it will be for him.
Last night, Jeremy Vine tweeted, urging the presenter to come forward publicly.
I know the individual concerned. I am very worried about his state of mind. I haven't spoken to him, but I gather from somebody who has that he is described as angry and keen to play it long. Now, to me, that means that he wants to be anonymous for as long as possible.
Today, The Sun printed new allegations, including claims the BBC presenter broke lockdown rules to meet a 23-year-old from a dating site during the pandemic. They told the paper, "I was quite shocked that he broke the rules to come and meet me because of who he is. I was just a random person online." They went on, "The BBC points the finger at others who do wrong, but their big star was happy to act like the rules don't apply to him." The government says the BBC must act.
It's not for me to tell the presenter to name themselves, but this clearly is having an impact on other people who are completely innocent, but whose names have been raised in social media.
The Sun has also published messages today that were allegedly sent to a 17-year-old in 2018. It means the BBC presenter is now facing allegations related to 4 separate people. Arriving at his radio show, Jeremy Vine said enough is enough.
Just terrible. I just think this thing has got to stop. I think I probably said enough, to be honest, but I never, ever want to go through this again. And we're all waiting.
The BBC, which has suspended the presenter, says it has been asked to pause its investigation while the police carry out theirs. But as the story continues to dominate the headlines, the pressure on the BBC continues to grow. Layla Hayes, ITV News.
Well, Rebecca Barry is outside the BBC's headquarters in central London for us now. Rebecca, these are ardent appeals to the unnamed star, aren't they?
Yeah, I think these comments from Jeremy Vine give an insight into the extraordinary complex situation that the BBC now finds itself in. The fact that one of its well-known presenters has chosen to speak out in this way reflects just how fraught the atmosphere is right now. Jeremy Vine was one of those high-profile figures forced to deny that he is the presenter at the centre of this scandal after false rumours started to circulate online. Jeremy Vine has a BBC Radio 2 show. He also has a show on Channel 5, and it was on that this morning that he said the BBC presenter should come forward, name himself, because of the damage it's doing to the BBC and the damage to those who've been falsely accused. But I think his comments also give an insight into what's happening behind the scenes. Jeremy Vine said that he is very concerned for the presenter's state of mind. Now, because all of this is cloaked in anonymity, both the accusers and the accused, it's very difficult for us to get any first-hand perspective. So I think Jeremy Vine's suggestion that the BBC presenter is angry feeds that thirst for detail, and some will ask why the clamour for the presenter to be named. Is it because it's genuinely in the public interest, or is it just because the public are very interested?
Rebecca, thank you. The Bank of England has laid bare the sheer scale of the mortgage misery on the way for many households across the country in the years ahead as they face paying much higher interest rates. Nearly 1 million mortgage holders could see their monthly repayments increase by around £500 in the next 3 years. Fewer than £500,000 people may face a monthly jump of around £750, and some 4 million fixed-rate mortgage holders could have a hike in borrowing costs between now and the end of 2026. Well, I'm joined now by our reporter Ellie Pitt. Lots of figures there, Ellie. Just guide us through them.
Well, look, lots of us have felt the impact of inflation being high, the high cost of our bills and food, all of those prices going up. And to try and fight that, the Bank of England have been increasing interest rates since 2021 to try and bring inflation down. But if you borrow money, say from the bank for your home, it's bad news, because those who are coming to renew their mortgages, if they're on a fixed rate, are finding that their monthly repayments are going up. And today we're hearing that 1 million households are going to have to find an extra £500 a month to meet their mortgage repayments. Huge numbers. And of course, the Bank of England says there will be consequences for this. But in an attempt to reassure us, they have said that UK household debt generally is much lower than when it was when interest rates were at this level 15 years ago during the 2008 financial crash. And banks say that they are in a stronger position to support struggling customers this time around.
Ellie, thank you for that guide. Customers of Thames Water are being told they could face higher bills. The warning comes as the boss of the troubled water company faced questions in Parliament today over a string of failures. The firm, which avoided nationalisation on Monday with a £750 million bailout, is grappling with a £14 billion debt. Our political correspondent Romilly Weeks has the story.
I'm sorry, Year 6 into the hall.
At this school in Lewisham, there'll be no lessons this morning. A huge leak outside has meant their water is completely cut off.
Well, it's baffling, isn't it? Because, you know, we have a huge company in Thames Water who get paid a lot of money to make sure that the water infrastructure works. And yet, here we are today. We have to close the school because we've got no running water.
It's another illustration of the frustrations of Thames Water customers. The company's only just avoided being taken over by the government, having racked up huge debts. But as its bosses faced MPs this morning, sorry was not an easy word.
We'd like to apologise to the taxpayer for being here and potentially putting them in this position where, yet again, another regulated market could potentially collapse and expose taxpayers to billions of pounds.
I think if you're asking for an apology from Ofwat, I think you should...
Asking for an apology from you, Ms Ross.
I won't apologise for my role as Chief Executive as Ofwat, no.
Okay. The company, which was fined over £35 million in the last 6 years for pollution, today admitted the need to invest in new infrastructure will lead to higher bills.
There is no doubt that there is a substantial need for more investment in the sector as a whole, including in Thames. And so that will need to be funded. And it is an unfortunate truth that the only source of ultimate funding for that in the current model is the customer.
Since 2006, Thames Water's debt has ballooned from £3.2 billion to £14.3 billion last year. In that same period, it's paid out enormous dividends to shareholders, £656 million in 2007 and £37 million last year. Campaigners believe the regulator is failing to hold water companies to account.
So we're seeing an increase, a perpetual increase potentially in sewer overflows. We're seeing, hundreds of thousands of sewage works being investigated for potential breaches of their permits. So the regulator, governments and water companies have lost their grip.
Thames is not the only water company struggling with debt. The finances of 4 others are also being scrutinised by the regulator. Meanwhile, it's going to be customers who pick up the bill. Romilly Weeks, ITV News.
England's top doctor has warned the NHS will face major disruption over the next fortnight because of strikes by junior doctors and consultants. Emergency care will be the priority. Well, I'm joined now by our health correspondent, Martin Stewart. Martin, patients facing yet more delays.
Absolutely, and this warning comes from the very top, as you mentioned, the most senior doctor within NHS England saying that the major disruption is going to be a result of 11 out of the next 14 days seeing some form of industrial action, strikes, if you will. He says they're going to have a serious impact, and this could be the most challenging period yet. Let's look at the 2 main strikes which are going to have the biggest impact. The first is a junior doctor walkout from tomorrow, that's Thursday, until Tuesday next week. 5 full days, making it the longest strike of its kind in the NHS's history. 2 days later, consultants, they're the senior doctors, the ones who have been backfilling junior doctors during their strikes, walk out themselves on Thursday the 20th and Friday the 21st of July. Now, resources, you mentioned, will be diverted towards urgent care. So if you've got an emergency, you can still dial 999 or go to A&E. But the real hit is going to be those outpatient appointments. What we've seen during previous junior doctor strikes is around 50,000 appointments being cancelled each day. That's totalled 500,000 nearly so far. And you look at the backdrop we've got, 7.4 million people currently waiting for treatment. That is a record. These disputes, as the previous ones, are overpay. The government have offered 5% plus lump sum payments. The BMA, the union, say they want somewhere nearer 35% to make up for what they say has seen a real-term payment costs. But where it leaves us is in a very tricky position, and it leaves Stephen Powis, the National Medical Director, saying we simply cannot continue like this.
A difficult month ahead, Martin. Thank you. Still to come, a long-lasting heat wave grips Europe with Italy, Spain and Greece sweltering. And a judge decides a note hidden in Aretha Franklin's sofa is her valid will. But first, the leader of NATO has described Ukraine as closer to NATO than ever before. Jens Stoltenberg made the comments at the NATO summit in Lithuania after President Zelensky criticised the organisation on what he says are absurd delays in the time it's taking for his country to become a member. Well, our Europe editor James Mates is in the Lithuanian capital of Vilnius. James, bring us up to date with events there.
Yeah, well, it's shaping up to be another pretty fractious day here. We'll find out more about what's been going on when the Prime Minister speaks to us, as he will in a few minutes' time, at his press conference here. But after what happened yesterday, when President Zelensky criticised NATO leaders, there's obviously been a big gap between expectations on the two sides here. So on the one hand, we have NATO making what they consider to be a pretty generous offer, saying that yes, Ukraine will become a member of NATO, but not until the war has ended and not until certain conditions have been met. You then had Zelensky saying, that's absurd, and it's not giving Ukraine the respect that they deserve. Well, late last night, a White House official made it clear that the Americans wanted to see a little bit more gratitude to US taxpayers for the $80+ billion they've already given. And then today, extraordinarily, Defense Secretary Ben Wallace, in an on-the-record chat with reporters, said, you know what, they do need to show more gratitude. And he told the story of how he had once driven 11 hours to a meeting in Ukraine to be handed a list of Ukrainian demands, and says that he told them, you know what, I'm not Amazon. Now, this is all some of the worst interpersonal feeling between the two sides that there has been since this war started. It's precisely what they hoped would not happen at this summit. But I think at the various press conferences this afternoon, Joe Biden, Rishi Sunak and others, there will have to be an attempt to try and smooth that over.
James in Lithuania, thank you. Teachers in England have voted to strike again in the autumn. The NASUWT union is calling for an above-inflation pay rise from the government and says it will coordinate action with other unions. The Department for Education says it's already made a fair and reasonable pay offer. And the man who shot dead 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell in Liverpool has been refused permission to appeal his sentence. Thomas Cashman was jailed for a minimum of 42 years in April for her murder. A suffocating heatwave set to last week's is blanketing southern Europe just as summer holidays begin. It was 42 degrees Celsius in Rome yesterday. Tourists there are trying their best to stay cool, but they haven't got it nearly as bad as those on the Italian islands of Sardinia and Sicily, where it's forecast to reach 48 degrees this week. Tourists and residents of Athens are feeling it too. Greek authorities are asking people to take precautions as temperatures there shoot up past 40 degrees. In southern Spain, residents are bracing themselves for highs of 44. That's 7 degrees hotter than it is in the Arabian desert right now. Well, good morning. Britain's correspondent Jonathan Swain is in Alicante and sent us this report.
With many schools about to break up, people watching this lunchtime perhaps looking to packing their cases and coming out and enjoying a summer holiday. But they should really take note of the warnings, not just from the authorities across Europe, but also from the locals as well. Of course, you want to come and enjoy scenes like this. If I just step out a shot, you can see people already enjoying the beach here today, cooling off in the sea. But locals we've been talking to are already changing what they're doing because of the extreme hot weather at the moment.
Normally I go for a little stroll to get a bit of a breeze after work, but the heat is stifling. I have lived here 10 years and I have noticed definitely that the temperature has risen.
We've been here 8 years and we've never experienced heat like it is. The thermometer nudged 43 degrees this afternoon. What breeze there is like standing in front of a warm hairdryer. It's unbelievable.
Sea temperatures are increasing, and data that's just released showed that last week was the hottest on record that the world experienced. So climate change is certainly being felt everywhere. We have extreme temperatures this week. Last week we had extreme floods in Spain, where we saw roads becoming rivers, cars being washed down through villages and town centres. Some of the videos went viral around the world, but really serious message with people on the roofs of cars clinging on for their lives. So really desperate sort of scenes across Europe from last week. And this week temperatures we could see as high as 48 degrees. That's going to be in Sicily, as high as 44 degrees Celsius here in Spain. Similar temperatures right across Europe as well, in Italy and also Greece as well. So perhaps it is worth thinking about this if you are packing up, coming out on your holidays to Europe over the next few days or into next week. Everyone is certainly enjoying the beach and the sea here behind me in Alicante, but it's certainly temperatures in the mid-40s. It's certainly not the weather just to be lying on the beach on your towel all day. Obviously enjoy your holiday, but I think even extreme temperatures like that, lying in it all day is perhaps a little too much.
Jonathan Swain with that report. The Queen arrived at Wimbledon this morning ahead of watching the men's and women's quarter-finals on centre court. Queen Camilla met with ball boys and girls, joking that she did the job herself 100 years ago. She also met with former British #1 Johanna Konta, who had turned to commentating after retiring from the professional game. And finally, a court in the United States has ruled that a handwritten note found down Aretha Franklin's sofa is a valid will. One of the greatest singers of our time did not have a formal typewritten will in place, despite years of health problems and a family feud. Her 3 sons had been contesting her estate, as Faye Barker now reports.
A battle between brothers. 2 of Aretha Franklin's 4 sons left court victorious with their families, some clearly pleased with the outcome. The late star's youngest son, Kelf, though, seemed reflective.
I think that she would be very happy and that she's proud right now that her wishes have been adhered to.
Known as the Queen of Soul, when Aretha Franklin died in 2018, it was initially thought she had no will. But handwritten documents were later found at her home, including one in a locked cabinet dated 2010 and another from 2014 found in the cushions of a couch. After a 2-day hearing, it was the 2014 document that a jury in a Michigan court found to override the other.
There were 2 handwritten documents found after her death that would give some conflicting wishes about her estate.
All 4 of Aretha Franklin's sons are expected to benefit from music royalties and copyright. Her youngest, though, will now get his mother's $1 million mansion.
Been a long 5 years for my family, my children, and we just want to exhale, truthfully.
Ted Charles II had wanted the 2010 will to stand, which was less favourable to Kelf and Edward. The 4th brother, who needs specialist care, wasn't involved in the case. Hefty tax bills mean Aretha Franklin's estate's now worth around $6 million. After this family fight, perhaps some harmony can now be restored. Faye Barker, ITV News.
That is it from us this lunchtime. Bye-bye.